Hello everybody, Michael here with McEwen Gunstocks. I'm super excited to be back over on this workbench with this antique muzzle loading black powder gun that came in with a shattered wrist on its stock. And there's videos that show how I pinned and glued all this back together and glass bedded, filled the missing areas of wood and reshaped it, and it came out great. Super happy with it. It'll never break in this area again. I matched the color pretty well by mixing Minwax stain, the Gunstock 231, and the Dark Walnut 2716, and found, I just played with it and came up with a mix that was a pretty good match, and I think I did pretty good. I think it looks great. Then I wasn't asked to do any of the metal work, but I didn't want to actually work the metal or the rust, but it could have used, and so I did just a little bit of cleanup. So I rubbed all the parts with steel wool, and then I I degreased the metal, and then well, let me move this in a little closer. So steel wooled everything, just to knock it off. I did try on the bottom of the barrel using a carding wheel, thinking that the rust that was on it could be deep enough into the metal, just like a rust finish, that in fact maybe it had originally been a rust finish, which could accept the carding and then just oil it. But that little experiment showed that the rust is really thin and very easily exposed metal, so didn't do that. I just lightly steel wooled it and then rubbed it down with cold glue, and then soaked that in. It's an old rust bluing trick of using used motor oil. And when you read about it online, well, I haven't looked at it for a very long time, but when I have in the past researched about using used motor oil, nobody ever explains the why. And my experience of using it, the why is the suspended carbon in the oil adds a color to the rust. And so I did a little experiment on the bottom of the barrel with used motor oil and just REM oil, and the used motor oil just gave it a really nice color. So I rubbed all the metal parts down with that. Now that maybe downside or bad part of that is that made it look wet, and it probably would have dried in time, but I then wiped it down with REM oil. And the result is just really nice. It's got a nicely oiled appearance, doesn't look wet. The rust brown color looks pretty even. It's really, for not a lot of effort, a really significant improvement. And for people that think that working old metal detracts from its later collector value, well, one, this gun doesn't actually have much financial value. It's a family heirloom. But two, I didn't impact the metal in the way that those people are concerned about. This was just a nice little light cleanup and oil. But the results look really great. The hammer assembly, well, I guess that's what they call this. I don't really know much about black powder guns. This looked horrible. I wish I'd filmed it before. Just brown and orange with rust and crusted rust. And I didn't remove the rust either by abrasive method. I just lightly steel wooled it, and I considered converting it to black iron, or iron oxide, I guess it is, with like rust mort. And maybe I got the chemistry wrong off the top of my head real quick, but you know what that does, it converts the rust. I didn't do that either, but I did wipe all the metal down with cold blue, Birchwood Casey Permaglue, and I think that has a rust conversion like property to it. Anyway, I did that, and then motor oil, and then REM oil, and it came out looking just really nice. And the same thing with the trigger assembly. This was also really bad shape, and I didn't take anything apart. To really do a proper restoration, everything would come apart. The screw heads would get cleaned up, and we'd clean up the threads, and it didn't bother doing any of this. It was just a quick steel wool and cold blue, and then motor oil, and then REM oil. And then I'm going to have to fabricate some pins. I think there were only 3 that survived. I have 3 here, so I kind of forget what was going on when I took it apart, if there were missing ones or some might have disintegrated, but clearly they'll be simple enough to fabricate if I need some pins. So yeah, now it's just going to be about putting it back together again, and this is going to look fantastic. Put it in a shadow box. Kind of thinking maybe the fellow needs a shadow box made. We could do that, but I think that would be the ticket with some black velvet behind it. Okay, well, that's all I got for this time. Next on this project, I'll be showing it reassembled. And the Diana 75, I'll be filming that. There was a little, you know, maybe I should have left it alone. It picked up a tiny little divot. I don't know how. I touched it with my ring, or I don't know. I try to go so careful on every project, especially as it approaches the end, and it always seems to pick up mystery dings. But I want the client to be getting it without a single ding, and let him collect the dings, which will happen. It's just look at it cross-eyed, it's going to get a ding somewhere. So in a normal walnut gun stock, it wouldn't have been a big deal because I just sand it out and oil it, but this was a stained stock, so I tried steaming it out. It didn't steam out. It was tiny. It didn't steam out, but then I caused more damage to the finish by trying to steam it. The iron, I kind of left little, by the iron I mean the little piece of aluminum I was heating up in the torch. It kind of left more marks than the little divot had, so then I was really into it, so I had to just sand it down, sand it right down through the divot, and then restain that area, and that's just really difficult. So, you know, it's the first time I've really done this kind of a project, and unless it's absolutely bare raw wood, you know, that'll take up the stain and it all looks very nice. But if it gets hit with the sandpaper, it changes its appearance, and once it's been oiled, it won't take the stain the same way again. So then it becomes like applying the stain as a paint, and it takes a long time to dry. And then the first time you put oil on it, it wants to melt the stain, and now you're back to square one. So anyway, I got a really nice finish. Just took a couple of tries or more, but it exposed some grain pockets a little bit, so I'm just working on filling it. It's pretty close to being filled back up again, and actually it looks nice, and I probably won't show you where it is and you'll never know, so it doesn't matter, but kind of held me up a little bit. And I have cloth gloves, right? When it gets down near the end, I use these inexpensive moving blankets you've seen me use. It's nice because you fold them up, you get multiple layers as you're working on a project. Alright, I'm going to shut up. I got to go to the gym. Thanks everybody. It looks like I didn't lose my comments. You know, I transferred the channel into business channel or whatever, and it said that it would lose my comments. It didn't, although it said it would solve a problem I had, which it didn't do that, so I guess it's all good. So anyway, but please, thank you for commenting, and like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that makes Google happy about me, and I'll be back soon.